Welcome to this episode of Mission Business, a podcast about good business for those in the business of good, presented by Your Part-Time Controller, LLC, also known as YPTC. My name is Jennifer Alleva, the host of Mission Business and managing partner at YPTC. On this episode of Mission Business, I spoke with Sulaiman Rahman, Chief Executive Officer of DiverseForce, an organization that provides recruiting and consulting services, including how to develop and retain talent to companies seeking to develop a diverse workforce. Additionally, Sulaiman and DiverseForce have partnered with the University of Pennsylvania to create DiverseForce on Boards, a board governance and leadership development program for mid to senior level professionals of color. The program is growing from its roots in Philadelphia to having a national reach with over 300 nonprofit matching partners nationally for the program's graduates to potentially serve as board members. You'll hear how Sulaiman's experience as a young boy growing up in two very different neighborhoods in Philadelphia, his experiences as a student at the University of Pennsylvania, and his involvement serving on boards as a young man of various organizations, including Philadelphia Industrial Development Corp, or PIDC, and the Community College of Philadelphia, or CCP, and others, led him to create a program that has provided a new framework for board leadership. And now, my conversation with Sulaiman Rahman. Sulaiman, thank you for joining us on Mission Business Podcast. It's great to see you. I think the last time I saw you was at the Women in Nonprofit Leadership Conference in 2019.
That's right. Pre-pandemic. It's great to see you as well, Jen. It's been obviously an adventure over the last 18 months, but really good to be here and be a part of this podcast.
Well, we're very happy to have you. I'm really excited to hear about your story and also all of the work that you're doing with equity on boards of nonprofit organizations. So let's talk about your actual day job, I guess, the work that you do with your company, DiverseForce. You're the CEO. What is DiverseForce and what do they do and how do you do it?
Well, we started DiverseForce, Jen, in 2017, and it's really an evolution of a business, a professional network that we built over over a decade, over 18,000 professionals in the greater Philadelphia region. We started DiverseForce as a talent solutions, human capital solutions firm with the intersection of diversity, equity, and inclusion, where we do advisory services around that as well. And we launched DiverseForce in 2017. We have an executive search firm where we help mission-based organizations, mission-driven organizations to find their next leaders. We also do leadership development for professionals of color, diverse professionals, and as I mentioned, consultancy services to help organizations to be more inclusive as well.
I want to go back to your network that you built back before DiverseForce, UPPN. Tell me about that and how that all got going.
Being from Philadelphia, I went on to University of Pennsylvania. And I don't know if you're familiar with Penn, but a lot of the students who are at Penn, particularly those who are professionals of color and young professionals, were not from Philadelphia. They were a lot of them from private schools in New York and DC. And so I was the go-to when it came to events, getting off campus and connecting with others, finding events that, that were interesting and safe, at the time when Philadelphia downtown wasn't as evolved as it is today. So we were able to build a web platform called Urban Philly. And we started the email list that eventually grew to over 30,000 subscribers. We were kind of the go-to for events going on in the city. And as we matured and our network matured, we realized we wanted to do more than, hang out and go to different restaurants and bars in the city and social events, but also to be engaged in the city, to give back in meaningful ways, to empower ourselves, to advance our careers, grow businesses, and to connect with other professionals throughout the region. So we started UPPN in 2007 with the mission to do exactly that, engage, empower, and connect the next generation of business and civic leaders. That was a whole different kind of list that we built outside of the Urban Philly for those professionals who are looking to partake in networking events, empowerment events, book signings, and give back through volunteerism, mentorship, being role models and mentors, obviously young people to continue to pass that, kind of those pathways of professional careers to the next generation, give them exposure to see new opportunities. And so, doing that, led to many of the things we're doing today.
That's an amazing story. I mean, you come a long way from being an electrical engineering major at UPenn. How did you ever use that degree in the work that you're doing?
I always say I'm an engineer in solving problems. I don't do much electricity, but I try to stay away from electricity. I'm not safe around electricity, but the systems thinking definitely comes into play today. Thinking about how to solve problems in that way.
That's incredible. So you went from University of Pennsylvania, UPPN network that you grew, DiverseForce started, and then it kind of melded into another relationship with University of Pennsylvania, or a relationship with University of Pennsylvania and DiverseForce. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So, when we started DiverseForce, we wanted to continue intersecting with what our UPPN network was about, which was about putting people first, impact first. So as soon as we started DiverseForce, we were already looking for ways to intersect kind of leadership development with impact. So we had an idea to start DiverseForce on boards. Mostly from my experience, when I started UPPN and had this network of professionals, became a convener of a hard-to-reach network in Philadelphia. A lot of boards started reaching out to me to serve on boards. So this is I was early 30s, and the Young Involved Philadelphia and Philadelphia Film Society was serving on their board. And in 2009, I became a board member for the African American Chamber of Commerce. Wow. And by 2010, they asked me to chair the board.
How old were you when you were the chair of the board of the African American Chamber? 33 years old.
33 years old. So 11 years ago, was the chairman of the board. And so I'm now meeting politicians and the mayor appointed me to PIDC's board as well. So I think I was the youngest person on that board at the time, and recognized that the nonprofit sector is really the epicenter of cross-sector collaboration to solve some of the city's most challenging problems in the city. And I knew that I could bring voice to the board. I knew I had a unique perspective. I knew I saw things differently, but sometimes you get caught up in the echo chamber. You don't know how do you insert your message, how to navigate the boards. These are powerful. Many times you're in proximity of a lot of power, and you don't want to put your foot in your mouth. But, so I knew at that time that it did take some understanding of what the role is of a board member in order to truly bring your full voice to the board and insert your story and perspective in a way that was useful and moved the agenda forward. So I always knew, especially chairing the board, it's kind of baptism by fire, learning Robert's rules and all kinds of things. And, even today with the program, I tell people, none of you need to go through a board training program to qualify to serve on a board, because everyone should have the right to serve on a board at the same level of incompetence as everyone else. Because I knew that there was no qualification for me to serve on a board. I brought myself, but just kind of learned myself and continue to learn today.
Let's get into the DiverseForce on Board program. How does that actually work? How does somebody get on into the program?
Yeah, great question. And I'll answer the question you asked as well. How do we start with Penn? So we started to search for partners, educational partners. We looked at LaSalle, we looked at others, and through mutual relationship and being an alum of Penn, found myself in conversation with Penn. And so Penn is an instructional partner. They actually have impact evaluation as well, which is what Impact Ed focuses in on. And so we had a great evaluation partner. We were able to work together to build out what does it look like to be a good, good governance, intersecting diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as leadership development for folks to use those experiential opportunities to also just become better leaders as well. We go into financial kind of storytelling, financials, understanding the P&L, the balance sheet.
Familiar with that.
Absolutely. And in a different language that, obviously the nonprofit speaks, but very similar documents, obviously, that, nonprofits are non-distribution of profit is a, tax designation. But at the end of the day, you want to be, have earnings and be able to be sustainable as well, and understand how the numbers tell a story as well.
That's right.
Also kind of fundraising. One of the goals of being a board member is to be a good fundraiser. We talk about strategic planning. We talk about kind of fiduciary responsibilities and some of the governance things that make boards work efficiently.
It sounds like an amazing program. So you have the program, you have the students going through the program, and then you have nonprofits in need of board members. How does the matching process work?
Yeah, so it's been evolving, Jen, over the years. We went from just a couple dozen nonprofits who are looking for matches where we're a little bit more manual, to now we're 300 nonprofits who've signed up as board matching partners. We've been fortunate to have filled over 140 board seats and growing almost every week with new matches and folks who are sending into executive to the executive committee and different officer positions. So it's really great to see early on the theory of change that we can connect folks with boards, but also they can make sure their presence is felt and get into leadership positions as well.
Tell me a little bit about any success stories that stand out to you about the board matches and the real difference that individuals that went through the DiverseForce on Boards program, the impact that they have made.
Yeah, great question. So many great stories. I'll share Melinda Johnson. Melinda went through our board program. She was worked at a university as a kind of a director of operations, if you will. Went through the board program and really just raved about how it helped her with her confidence, helped her to understand that she belonged at the table. She, once graduating the program, gave her the confidence to actually run for her school board in New Jersey, and she won. She became one of the school board members in New Jersey. She took some time off and was really rethinking her career. We connected her to William Penn Foundation, was a sponsor of that cohort in the aquarium for the aquatic science in New Jersey. It was a William Penn Foundation grantee that she was actually matched to their board. Shortly later, she actually became the chair of the development committee.
Wow.
So brought some really great insights around fundraising. And later, she actually became a part of our Diverse Slate product with the DiverseForce, where we were actually doing a search for Compass Pro Bono. They were looking for their next executive director. We had already placed 2 board members onto the board of Compass Pro Bono. And we actually helped them to have a diverse slate of candidates, and Melinda fit the bill to be one of the candidates, and she ended up being their final selection. So she's now the new executive director, within the last maybe 6 months of Compass Pro Bono, and she has 2 alumni that are part of the board as well that can understand kind of some of the diversity things that she may want to move forward and have more of a voice. Many times when you have 1 or just 2 people on a board and don't really have, or you're an executive director and don't have the diversity on the board, you can find yourself trying to communicate things that others can't relate with and don't really have. Sometimes the reinforcement or other perspectives that can also reinforce some of the ideas you have. We've placed folks in executive director roles, and they'll say things like, one person said, I've never felt more misunderstood by the board when bringing some of the lived experiences they've had and trying to bring that to an organization that may not be as inclusive from a board perspective.
Yeah.
So
Tell me, is the program DiverseForce on boards only Philadelphia based? Are you seeking to expand that? And there's some of the organizations that are seeking board members. Can anyone from around the country be part of this now that we're in this virtual world?
Well, that's been the silver lining, Jen, of the pandemic. And even before COVID, we were thinking about how do we expand geographically? Can we move this to be more of a virtual cohort-based model? So during that time, and the question was Zoom and some of these other platforms, was the market adoption strong enough yet? And COVID forced market adoption. We knew it would happen at some point, but was it at the right time? And COVID really accelerated that and pretty much answered that question. And we were able to, in partnership with Penn, convert the program 100% online. We finished up cohorts that were kind of disrupted during that time. And so we had almost two cohorts finishing together. And we started our cohort 6, which was full 100% virtual and just as good of return as far as the reviews and the impact. Was just as powerful. So we now opened up, and we have and we were already having folks who were enrolling from outside of the greater Philadelphia area. So we're now very strategically building and expanding folks all across the country as well.
Well, that's fantastic because Mission Business Podcast is a national podcast. So maybe you'll get some more interest with this. But is it Melinda that you were telling the story about? That is very impactful. I wanted to go back to that just for a minute because of the fact that it's not just the boards that are really benefiting. And of course, the organizations that they're serving, all of their constituents that are benefiting from this program. It's the actual person in the program that is developing new skills and new confidence to do amazing things. So I just didn't want that point to go unnoticed. I needed to just put exclamation point on it because I think that is just so cool.
Absolutely. And we have partners like Comcast and Accenture and others who are investing in their talent that go through the board program, Elsevier, Capital One, who are investing in their talent, and they recognize that board service does make stronger leaders, and not only the corporate social responsibility, but also the opportunity for their high potential talent to continue to grow themselves as leaders as well.
Your part-time controller, the nonprofit accounting specialist, helps nonprofits everywhere navigate the new landscape by supporting them with their U.S.-based remote services accounting staff. With over 700 nonprofit clients from coast to coast, YPTC assists with all your financial management needs. From bookkeeping and monthly financial statements to forecasting, budgeting, and customized dashboards. We help executive directors and board members sleep at night. More at yptc.com.
Now I'm going to just shift conversation a little bit to your board experience and then just go into your thoughts about more deeply about equity on boards. So you talked a little bit about your board experience, PIDC, and as a 33-year-old young man and young Black man on these boards. Tell me a little bit about that experience, on these traditionally white boards that, here comes Sulaiman. How do you get your voice heard? And then how does that kind of help you direct how you want to help others in their board service?
Absolutely. And serving on some of those boards at that time, being young, being a minority on the board, it is sometimes difficult not to have kind of that imposter syndrome creep in, and just happy to be there and kind of be quiet and just listen and not really quite know when to insert yourself and whether it will be received, in a way that it was intended to make the organization better. So one of the things that I recognized was that a board program like DiverseForce on boards, and there was a time lapse between me serving on those boards. I stepped down from all the boards in 2012 that I was serving on at the time, moved out to Bluebell and had a business that took me traveling and speaking and training leaders across the country for a few years. So it wasn't until about 2016 that I moved back into the city and really wanted to pick back up UPPN events. We were doing UPPN events during that time, engaging that network, but it wasn't really a revenue model around it. So how do we take our UPPN network and continue to cultivate and build those leaders and make sure we're meeting their human needs, but also have an intersection of value with organizations and companies that over the years have reached out to me for talent, reached out for me for board members, and so many different things. And DiverseForce was born out of that intersection of value. How do we make sure that that folks can serve on boards of organizations, serve in leadership roles, develop themselves, help organizations to retain their talent. And that's where DiverseForce became kind of a model where we could actually have a revenue model as well to invest back into the talent. So
I love that.
That's where it led.
So boards in general, how would you describe an effective board?
Yeah, an effective board would be a board that has a diversity of background skills, making sure it really rounds out the talent that you need to complement the team that you have, whether you're a small organization and don't have any employees, you're a mid-sized organization or a large organization, will determine what type of board members will help to round out the skills you need for that board. 2 is a board that is mission driven, really focus on the mission at hand and is keeping the organization obviously in compliance with all the laws, which is from a fiduciary perspective. A board that's also helping the organization be strategic, working in partnership with the executive director to have a strategic vision with external factors and internal factors all in mind, and the causes that you're looking to develop and the issues you're looking to solve. And also a board that can bring some more generative thought as well, bring perspectives and fill blind spots that the organization may have to really have an accuracy of solutions and truly help to think differently. Things are constantly changing, and how do you make sure that you can bring external kind of perspective and thoughts from a diversity of different organizations and backgrounds, and have that constructive conflict. I always encourage organizations to have, as a board, to have constructive conflict, not destructive conflict where you're at each other and arguing over, and tearing down relationships, but instead idea conflict. How do we see things differently and find common ground, but keeping the North Star, the mission in mind, to make sure that we're constantly stress testing the ideas that we have and not having that persistence of thought and doing things just because we've done it for so long.
That's hard.
To really think differently. Absolutely.
And, interesting, I didn't hear you say too much about fundraising or financial management, which is so funny because often boards think that is our first and foremost job, is to raise money for this organization. And oftentimes it is, but very often that could be lower than just pursuing this diversity of thought and strategic planning that is necessary.
Absolutely. And I think that we've gotten to this culture, and obviously it's so important that the board support around the financial sustainability of the organization, but we must go beyond the check. That's such an important role in the organization, to go beyond just what a person can get or give, but what they can bring to the table to help, again, the organization in all those different ways.
Sulaiman, I guess you would say, the people that are closest with the money aren't closest with the solutions. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, folks who have the money are not closest to the solutions. In many cases, in some cases they are, but making sure that we don't leave out people that could add tremendous value on the board because they may not be able to get or give what everyone else is giving around the board. Many times boards are kind of social clubs for the wealthy, if you will. And again, and having that diversity of thought, social economic status, perspective and background is so important to have that diversity.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about solving that problem. How do we get more diversity? And I'm going to cite a BoardSource study. BoardSource, the DC-based nonprofit that focuses on on empowering board governance recently conducted a survey of more than 800 public charity CEOs and board chairs. The survey was published in their Leading with Intent study. Some of the results were quoted in the transformational article published this year by Ann Wallestad, President and CEO of BoardSource, and it's called, that article is called The 4 Principles of Purpose-Driven Board Leadership. The survey that was done in connection with that article found that 78% of board members are white and 19% of boards are all white. And boards lacking in racial ethnic diversity self-report that their board's racial ethnic makeup negatively impacts their ability to understand the organization's operating environment and work. So let's talk about that. What are some of the systematic problems? What are the problems with the system that make this happen?
Yeah. And I'm familiar with that report. In fact, shortly after we started DiverseForce on boards, that their first report came out, I think in 2017, after maybe 20 years of kind of tracking board diversity, and recognized that the needle didn't move, over that period of time. And it was a really, Anne wrote a great article on that topic as well. And I believe, if we think about how things have shifted, Jen, over the years, especially demographically, there was a time where 75% plus of the population are baby boomers, and it was predominantly a white society, and we had obviously many Black and brown kids who were beneficiaries of some of the social services and some of the nonprofit programs after, from 1619 to 1965, when there were practices, policies, and laws that systematically excluded, particularly Black people from building wealth. So you can just kind of history, just kind of go through history, and you can recognize why some of the outcomes that we have today and why things were constructed that way. But you then have millennials, which will be 75% of the population in the workforce by 2025. 44% of the millennial population are people of color, are non-white. So demographic shifts alone have become a key driver for why diversity at every level is critical. And we've now had breakthroughs for many different areas of professions for leaders across the board. So the pipeline isn't as much the challenge today as it is kind of the network effect that tends to happen, where people tend to socialize and connect with people that are in their direct networks. And if we've had predominantly white boards and they're reaching out to their friends, family members, and colleagues, many times they're not getting outside of that comfortable network to pull people into these social clubs, if you will, be more thoughtful and intentional. You can have good intent, but it takes intentional action in order to really diversify. So the good thing is that we're seeing those numbers. I think it was over 80% before. So the numbers are starting to shift a bit. So it's good to hear that, and a lot more needs to happen. And again, programs like DiverseForce on boards and others that are really focused on making sure that there's no reason why organizations cannot find diverse talent. That won't be the challenge. Now it's just a matter of making sure to make those connections and make those relationships, and in the same way build value and make sure that your organization also is attractive enough, that your message is attractive. Make sure that you're inclusive and not tokenizing people and just counting heads instead of making sure the heads count, if you will, when they serve on your board. And you can not only attract but also retain. And I always say the greatest recruiting tool is a good retention strategy. You retain good people, they speak highly of you, and their networks become your network. And before you know it, you start to have just a great board of talented people from all different backgrounds that truly fill all the kind of gaps and blind spots that just makes the organization better. So many different studies and research shows that diverse teams just perform better. outperform, they outproduce, all kinds of things. So we know the business case, if you will, for diversity. Now it's just a matter of taking the action to maximize it.
That's exactly what was going to be my next question. What is the business case? This is called Mission Business Podcast. So
sure.
What is it, what is it about diversity that helps the organization operationally, financially, just everything, function better as a business?
Sure. You just think about the opportunity to tap into new networks that you're probably not tapping into, new donors, new just insights and perspectives. So when you think about just the network effect, when you tap into those networks, you think about the employee base. People talk about having a hard time finding talent. Well, it's difficult if you're only looking at, a half of the talent pool. You're only kind of fishing in a pool that's half the population versus having an opportunity to find great talent across all different cultures and backgrounds. So when you have a diverse organization, you're able to not only attract talent, but also recruit that talent and retain that talent as well. So it's from a talent perspective, it's from diverse leaders attract other talent. They retain them longer. They can be good mentors and aspirational role models to really help break through new leaders into the market. So many different benefits.
And honestly, when you go to the mission side of things, talk about the business side of things, the mission side of things, having a diverse board and a board that is more in tune and like the constituents that are being served by that organization, that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think about, as many times organizations are very data driven, but many times the data, depends on who formulated the data and the hypothesis that came before you formulating the data, and it influences and many times undervalue lived experiences. We don't realize that there's just things that we don't see. And until you have that light bulb moment, if you will, many times you'll continue doing the same thing. It's kind of like the little girl. I kind of shared a story. The little girl who goes to her mom and says, "Mom, why is it that every year when you make the roast, you cut the end of the roast before you put it in the oven?" And her mom says, "You know what? I'm not sure. My mother used to do it. Ask your grandmom." She asked her grandmom, and her grandmom said the same thing. She said, "My mother did it when I was young. Ask your great grandmom." And she asked her great grandma, "Why do you cut the end of your roast before you put it in the oven during the holidays?" She said, "Sweetheart, I don't cut the end of the roast." He said, "Wait a minute. What do you mean? Grandma said you did it when she was younger. She did it when my mom was younger. We still do it today." She said, "Oh," she said, "back then we had a small pan and the roast didn't fit. So I had to cut the end of the roast." She said, "But today I get my whole roast. I got a bigger pan." And the question is, how many of us, are still cutting the ends off on life, on impact, on so many different things based on someone else's old small pan? And there's so many examples of how we have this persistence of thought that things that happened, generations ago are still happening today with no real rhyme or reason other than it hasn't been disrupted in a different way of seeing it.
And we are so lucky in the nonprofit sector to have you, Sulaiman, bringing us together in this way. To be honest, this is amazing, the amazing work that you're doing. What do you see for the future in board equity and diversity in the nonprofit world?
Yeah, I just think that there's opportunities for everyone to level up from a board perspective. There's a lot more emphasis on the board. There's a lot more risk in things that are happening externally where boards truly have to step up. There was a time when, organizational culture wasn't as much of a risk to an organization, employees, having gripes in social media where someone does one tweet and all of a sudden you're in a crisis, if you will, about something that happens in the workforce or, different things. So boards have to be a lot more savvy today to lead acceleration as far as the digital transformation that's happening in our world where things are changing very, very quickly. Everything's changing, the shelf life of skills and all kinds of things are decreasing. So in order for organizations to sustain themselves into the future, they have to have people who have that agile kind of digital transformation mindset as well, not only for-profit, but nonprofit organizations, for them to survive moving forward. And how do we navigate this new environment, this kind of fourth industrial revolution? And you think about workforce and how are we preparing people for the future of work and not the past of work as well. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves in a two-class society like, many other countries and societies. So it's so important that we have future thinking leaders, but not just from the same, background and the same, thought process, because there's so many blind spots that we need to fill, and we need to equip more people in these spaces and put them in places where their presence can be felt as well.
Is there anything, Sulaiman, that I haven't asked you that I should have asked you that you want to talk about that is important for Mission Business Podcast audience to hear?
Yeah, I don't often get a chance to kind of tell my story because our mission typically does come from our story, many times how we grew up. And, although you've heard my story getting to University of Pennsylvania, that wasn't really, probably wouldn't be something that would be predicted, having two parents who, first generation who did not go to college. My mother got a second chance, an opportunity through a program, a nonprofit organization, and had an opportunity kind of around 26, 27 to get an entry-level opportunity for the city of Philadelphia, and gave her the opportunity to move out into a community where there were better schools, and then happened to be in white communities in the far northeast. So my father was still in Germantown, in the projects in Germantown, and my mother, they got divorced and we're out in the Northeast, but I was on the weekends, in the projects in in the Germantown of Philadelphia. And during the week, I'm in Northeast Philadelphia. And so I was very conscious of race very early. And you find a lot of, Black and brown folks who kind of are in these different, in different communities. They're conscious of race early on and see kind of the dichotomy, if you will, or these two worlds that we live in, the tale of two cities. And at that time, I wasn't able to process why the Black community was had such, torn down, or, not knowing that is the kind of the collateral damage of redlining and all the things that some of the government policies that left those communities in those times. And the fact that I'm in a community that's 1% African American, and how you're being seen and how you're being spoke to by kids at that time and how you see yourself. So a lot of that shapes you early on, and recognize that there's a fine line between poverty and prosperity. There was a Jewish family who took me to school during high school. A good friend of mine, Jewish, his mother would take me to school, and I learned about taking the PSATs. And so I took the PSATs, and it started with also just me playing football. I was an average student. Had a role model, my older cousin, who played football, and I thought I was going to go to the NFL, and he told me what not to do because he wasn't getting letters to college. And his senior year, he said, "Hey, you got to pay attention in class if you want to get to the NFL, if you will." And so my 8th grade year, I got straight A's after being just an average student, and got straight A's through high school. And that opened up doors, playing football and being a decent student. Started getting calls from Ivy League schools. Never knew what an Ivy League school was. I thought Penn was I thought Penn was Penn State. So when the coach came to my home and told me it's right down the street, I didn't compute to me. So. Yeah. So for me, it's really giving people opportunities that they may have not had access to or exposure, especially young people. There's so many talented folks, young kids who are just brilliant, but, don't have the role models, the possibility models, don't see themselves in our community. So it was not only to lift our talent to be excellent and be in leadership roles, but also make sure that they're exposed, that young people are exposed to them. And we can build the aspirational capital that we need for young people to be on the right path and just have different outcomes. So the direct impact is being on boards. The indirect impact is so many different other ways of this underutilized kind of asset that our city has, of these Black and brown professionals that not only, should be in leadership roles, but also should be the cultural capital, the aspirational capital that our young people need for them to be in the boardrooms where decisions are being made that are actually setting the trajectory for the lives of so many people in our city.
I mean, what an incredible story of your mentorship and love that people gave you. They took you under their wing, and now you're doing that for so many other people. And that's an amazing story, Sulaiman. And I can't thank you enough for being with us today, and so appreciate everything that you brought to the conversation. Thanks
so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
That was my conversation with Sulaiman Rahman, CEO of DiverseForce. To learn more about the important work that DiverseForce and DiverseForce on Boards is doing, visit DiverseForce.com. Up next, we will hear from YPTC's own Geraldine Dressler with a fun twist on our Ask the Controller segment.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Board Member, a special spin on our Ask the Controller segment. Our guest today is Shane Nelson. Shane is a graduate of DiverseForce on Boards. He is the CEO and co-founder of Reify Solutions, where he manages a portfolio of social impact projects spanning workforce development, philanthropy, and social justice. And he serves as vice president of the board of directors for Friends of Bache Martin, with yours truly, which provides resources to a Philadelphia public school. Shane, thank you so much for being with us today.
Geraldine, thanks so much for making the time. I'm so excited.
Okay, so Shane, tell me, what do you think was the most valuable lesson or perspective that you gained by going through the DiverseForce on Boards program?
I think the biggest perspective shift, I experienced by going through the DiverseForce on Boards program was just the fact that it's possible, right? That there are boards and organizations out there that are looking for my leadership, my perspective, my experience, and then filling that need, right? To be that new diverse, person and perspective in the room, and being able to be told that it was possible, not only from different cohort members, but also my instructors as well. It was this constant loop, each class, every time we met up, whether in person or virtual, because we did make that transition that, it's possible and I can do this.
We've certainly benefited, I think, as an organization from your participation. I remember one of our board members met you at one of the DiverseForce on Boards events, and it was kind of love at first sight or something along those lines. But we have a very diverse K-8 public school in Philadelphia, and having our board reflect our community of children that we serve was really important to us. Having you come into our world and having that have been part of the program was really special, and I think impactful for the direction that we have taken as a board.
Oh man, it's been impactful for me too. So I'm super excited. Go team always, go team Bache. Here for it.
So in Sulaiman's interview with Jen, he mentioned the network effect as being a systemic barrier to diversifying boards, meaning that boards have stayed largely white because networks tend to reflect friends, family, and colleagues that board members already know. Can you talk about how that has played out with your own board experience?
Oh, definitely. So the network effect is super real in my life, in my mind, and it's something that I actively work against, and I help my clients navigate that as well. But before joining different boards of organizations and kind of having that stamp, right, and that confidence of being a board member, a lot of my network revolved around nonprofit professionals and the higher education space, just by trade and by need, right? That's the network that I needed at the time. And now that I'm fully immersed in board service, I get an opportunity to learn from different corporate professionals and see what some of the things that they're going through and experience those conversations with them. A lot of my friends are a lot younger, they're new parents. And so getting a chance to hang out with seasoned parents in the game, I get advice from them and then I pass it over to my friends. And then as well, coming from both a Black and brown identity, I've gravitated more to those social groups. And now being a part of different boards has given me the opportunity to network with more white people, to be quite frank. And having that opportunity has diversified my network, and I simultaneously diversify there. So we actively co-conspire and work against the network effect for the better.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, we've absolutely seen that play out with our own networks through the board that we serve on together. And for me personally, I think, the opposite is true for me. And so it sounds like you've been enriched through this program, not just as a professional, but as an individual too. And I think that's a really special element that comes out of it.
No, definitely. And it's awesome being able to have, access to different communities. So when we witnessed the racial reckoning last year and, ongoing social justice conversations, being able to call different folks, into growth and, have that one-on-one time with them so they're not going out into the world and perpetuating different things. They have a trusted advisor in me, and I get to build that rapport with them, outside of board meetings too. So it's a way to also continue my advocacy and my work, which is like a part of my personal mission. So it's fantastic.
It is, Shane, and you have accomplished quite a lot in your young years. So thank you so much for being with us today. I wish we had more time to dive deeper, but I know I'll be seeing you soon.
Definitely. Appreciate you having me, Geraldine. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Mission Business Podcast. We look forward to bringing you more stories of innovation and perseverance from nonprofits around the world. I want to thank the team at PWP Video for their guidance and assistance in the development and production of this podcast. They are a great partner for Media with a Mission, and you can find them at pwpvideo.com. Additional information about this episode can be found at missionbusinesspod.com. And follow us on social media at Mission Business Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. A very special thank you to our guests on this episode, Sulaiman Rahman and Shane Nelson. This podcast was produced by Erica Blair and Geraldine Dressler of Your Part-Time Controller, LLC. Dave Winston and Michael Schweisheimer are the producers from PWP Video. And the show was directed and edited by Pat Ganley. Again, I'm Jennifer Alleva, and we'll see you here next time on Mission Business, presented by Your Part-Time Controller, LLC.